Good morning, everybody. If I look tired, it's because it's actually late at night. I'm recording this the night before, so I apologize if I look a little rough. Okay, so today we are going to work on some no red ink stuff. Based on the diagnostic that we did last week, it felt like we had a few things to cover that people didn't uh, do as well with that I want to make sure that you feel comfortable with before we move forward. So the first one is the correct use of commas with fanboys. This is going way back. Most people did okay with this, but this it felt like a good time to review it because it's building on the things that we didn't do so great with. So the correct use of commas with fanboys. Just so you know, before we start, all of these sentences are wrong. So I'm going to show you ways to fix them and why we should fix them. So this first sentence, Trevor needed help with his eye sculpture, so I headed to his house with all my tools. Okay, so we got to decide if we need a comma here. Remember that fanboys, when we're talking about those, we're talking about for and nor, but, or, yet, and so. All right, and so when I have this kind of sentence, which is, got a fanboys in it, then I have to decide, do I need a comma or not? Okay, we look at this next sentence, we also see a fanboys here, and we want to make sure that we know whether we need the comma there or not based on the fanboys. We don't always have that comma, but sometimes we need it. The way that we do that test is we check and see, is everything before the fanboys, can that be a standalone sentence? Is it a complete thought? So Trevor needed help with his eye sculpture. Yes, I could put a period right there. That would be a complete thought. I would need nothing else. All right, so then I do the same test with what's after. I had to do his house with all my tools. Yeah, that's also a complete thought. I can leave that all by itself and it's fine. So that means that this so is working as a coordinating conjunction. It's combining these two sentences together into one sentence. And that means that I need a comma right here because I have a complete sentence on this side and a complete sentence on this side, right? If I didn't have this I here, if I didn't have a subject for the second part, then I wouldn't need this comma. I'll show you a quick example. If it said, I'll use my trusted sentence here. I went to the store and I bought, some milk. Okay, that's exactly the same thing that's happened up here. I have a complete sentence on this side. I have a complete sentence on this side. And that means that I need a comma there. However, if I take out the subject, because we already know that the subject is I, me, then that means that I have a complete sentence on this side, but I no longer have a complete sentence on this side. Bought some milk is not a complete sentence by itself. I'm missing the subject. So that means that I take the comma out that would be right here. Okay? So that's the difference. We got to check and make sure that both sides of the sentence have a complete thought. In this case it does, so this means it gets a comma right before the fanboys. Now on this one, we can actually do the exact same test. We have a fanboys right here, for and nor, but, or, yet, and so. And so when we do the check, we're going to check on this side first. In order to help him, I brought an ice pick. Okay, that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. We can put a period right there and be done. A plastic ruler. That's not a complete sentence, obviously. So that means that we don't need this comma. Even though we have a fanboys, even though we have a coordinating conjunction, this is really just tying two things together, two ideas together, and not complete thoughts, right? So that's how we figure that out. So easy peasy. I feel like I remember everybody doing okay with this, like not any problem at all. So this will probably go pretty quick for you, but knowing this rule helps us decide about more difficult things that we are struggling with, such as semicolons and colons. All right, so if you can do this test, then you're set. You've got the skills you need in order to do semicolons and colons well. Okay, so let's scroll down a little bit. This is the second one, correcting comma splices. We struggled with this one for sure. And so this is what's called a comma splice, which is incorrect. We can't do what's going on here. So it says Jimmy has a large collection of piggy banks. He buys a new one every week. So the problem is that I actually need a fanboys here, but I don't have one. Okay, that's one of the ways that I can fix this. So let me copy this. I'm going to actually put this in a couple different correct ways. Whoops, hit the wrong button. Let me mark this one as red so we remember that it's wrong. All right, so that one's wrong. On this one, I'm going to, whoops, I don't know what I just did wrong. Oh, I think I hit some button. Whenever I messed it up, I hit some button and it started recording my speech. Okay, so glad we got that figured out. All right. When I'm correcting this comma splice, I can do this in a couple different ways. All right. So here is way one. I'm actually going to make a couple different copies here. See if I can not mess it up this time, because I can correct this in three ways, like I said. Okay, way one is I've already mentioned it. I can add a fanboys. Okay, Jimmy has a large collection of piggy banks. He buys a new one every week. And works fine there. For and, or, but, or, yet, and so. Okay, so that is one of the ways that I can fix this. I can just add a semicolon. A fanboy. And the reason that I know this is wrong, by the way, is because I still have a complete sentence on both sides of this. Jimmy has a large collection of piggy banks. Good. He buys a new one every week. Yep, that's another complete thought all by itself. So a comma splice is when I have a comma separating two sentences or combining two sentences, and I can't do that. That's against the grammar rules, right? So again, one way to fix that is to put a fanboys correction in there. All right. The next way to fix it is even simpler. The next way to fix it is just to make it into two sentences. Jimmy has a large collection of piggy banks, period. He buys a new one every week. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Not difficult at all. Okay, and the last way is the way that people tend to struggle with the most, but I promise it's no more complicated than this period right here. Instead of using a period, I'm going to use a semicolon, okay? And I can do that. It's almost like it's actually exactly like using this comma, but instead of this comma, I'm using just the semicolon. I'm trading this semicolon for this whole construction right here, right? What the semicolon does is it shows me that these two sides are connected, but I'm still aware that I'm starting a new thought, okay? So Jimmy has a large collection of piggy banks, semicolon, he buys a new one every week. All right, that tells me that the author knows that these two things are related and they want to show the connection between the two of them, but they don't want to use an and or another fanboys, and they don't want to use a full stop like a period. Okay, so this is a pretty direct and easy way of creating one sentence out of two connected sentences, turning those into one sentence. Okay. So that's again the test. Does it have a complete thought on each side? And if it does, and they're related, then I can use a semicolon. Easy peasy. Okay, that's the way you correct a comma splice. Finally, this is the one definitely people struggle with the most. And I can appreciate it. It's tough. But, part of it, again, building off of these things that we've already looked at, knowing the rules about fanboys, knowing the rules about comma splices, and how to correct them, especially with a semicolon, tells you almost everything you need to know about whether you need to have a colon or a semicolon here. Okay, so let's start actually with this bottom sentence. She knew Hermione Granger's face when she saw her. Others only knew about her heroic deeds. You actually heard the pause in my voice. I couldn't even say it as if there was a natural comma there. That's because this is not correct punctuation. Again, I can fix this. This is a comma splice. I can fix this in the same ways that I fixed this Jimmy sentence. I can use fanboys, make it into two sentences, or use a semicolon. But probably no red ink, since it's asking you to use semicolons, it's going to want you to replace this with a semicolon. Okay, and so that's important to know how to do. I want to do that check. Do I have a full sentence on this side? Correct answer is yes. And do I have a full sentence on this side? Correct answer is yes. All right, if that's true, as long as they're connected, I'm going to put a semicolon there and I'll be good. The trickier one is the colon, okay? And this one is dealing with, is actually not yet, but it's incorrect, like I said. It's going to be using a colon. Here's where they're tricky, okay? It's because using a colon, you generally also have full sentences on both sides. So here's where the colon really should be, where this comma is right here. This is my point. That's a full thought. That's a complete thought. Okay, that's a full sentence. This is also a complete sentence. And so it feels like we could probably replace this with a semicolon. Excuse me. We could probably replace this with a semicolon, and we'd be okay. We'd be solving it in the same way this is here. However, the difference is that the second part is explaining or summarizing the first part. okay? Excuse me. If you look here, they definitely relate. Like they both have something to do with each other. One sentence definitely belongs after the other, but they can also stand all by themselves. They don't need the other one. If I say this is my point and I stop it and I don't have this second half, then that's going to be a really awkward sentence to say all by itself, even though it's a complete thought. Okay, and so that's why I need a colon here. I'm trying to use that colon to say, my thought's not really done. I need to explain the first thought that I had. And that's where a colon is better used than a semicolon. I learned this as a drum roll, right? So it's like building up to something. If I say, this is my point, even though that's a complete thought, it still feels like I have more to say. I need to explain my point now. And so that's what I mean by the second half explaining or summarizing the first part. Okay, if that's happening, then you probably need you probably need a colon there instead of a semicolon. Okay, and that's really it. Again, because this is no red ink and because we're not in the classroom, obviously, I know that some people will continue to struggle with this. I can't encourage you enough, again, to rely on the lessons. If and when you get an answer wrong, read over that lesson. It will show you exactly what happened, why you did it wrong, what you need to do to fix it, and that will speed you through the process even quicker, okay? I hate to see people struggle in the classroom, and I know that sometimes you're struggling at home doing this stuff on your own as well. So I will be around on email, of course, until about 4 p.m. every day, and you can always email me. We can even set up a face-to-face one-on-one video conference if that would be helpful. Just let me know and we'll try to arrange it. But definitely rely on the tools that are in No Red Ink if you get stuck and you're struggling with this. Or rewatch this video if it's any help to you at all. Okay? So take care. Hope everybody's doing okay, and we'll see you soon.